there is karma here. Donald Trump is physically deteriorating before our eyes. And now a majority of Americans in a new YouGov poll say that Donald Trump is a very weak person. Also, his approval has a net negative right now of -17. Before departing to Pittsburgh, Donald Trump spoke with reporters and the TV pooler zoomed in on his hand, as John Hudson explains. When you take a look at Donald Trump's hand right there, we've seen that before, but it is definitely getting worse. Now, we then saw Donald Trump give a very bizarre and deranged press conference in Pittsburgh, where he started talking about bringing in $16 trillion when it's nowhere close to that. And then he says inflation is gone. And then he told a story about how his uncle taught at MIT and the Unabomber Ted Kaczynski was a student of his uncle's. The thing is that Ted Kaczynski never went to MIT, was not a student of Donald Trump's uncle. The entire story is entirely made up, a deranged, demented lie from someone who has conversations with a fictitious cannibal, Hannibal Lecter, as well. We showed you this photo as well from over the weekend when Donald Trump attended the FIFA Club World Cup at the MetLife Stadium in New Jersey. You take a look right there at his ankles, incredibly swollen right there. And for all of the medical professionals out there, this is all very alarming health-related signs. And then, of course, you take a look at his face right there, again, completely orange and deteriorating. A very overall, looks very unhealthy individual right there. And as I said, there's a karma here because just thinking about the amount of people the Trump regime has killed, willfully, maliciously, recklessly, and negligently, but I think it was more willfully. We learned this story yesterday as well. Hat tip to The Atlantic for reporting on it first. The Trump regime has given the order to incinerate food instead of sending it to people abroad who need it. Nearly 500 metric tons of emergency food, enough to feed about 1.5 million children for a week, are set to expire. Rather than bring that food to feed the children who may die without it, the Trump regime is incinerating it. The story goes on to say how 5 months into its unprecedented dismantling of foreign aid programs, the Trump regime has given the order to incinerate food instead of sending it to the people who need it. Nearly 500 metric tons of emergency food, enough to feed about 1.5 million children for a week, are set to expire today, according to current and former government employees with direct knowledge of the rations. Within weeks, two of those sources told me the food meant for children in Afghanistan and Pakistan will be ash. I mean, just horrible stuff right there. Now, as Donald Trump also gives Vladimir Putin a 50-day heads up for Putin to do whatever he wants to do in Kyiv, which means sending Shahed drones and ballistic missiles to kill innocent Ukrainians. We're seeing right now, not even 24 hours, as Jay in Kyiv writes, after Trump refuses to apply sanctions, but does give Putin 50 more days, Russia again begin bombing Kyiv. Even while General Kellogg, Donald Trump's envoy to Ukraine, is in town. And Kellogg and Trump said that they would bring peace to Ukraine in 24 hours. Putin's forces unleashing massive assaults on Kharkiv and Kyiv, rocking the city with dozens of explosions. Russian ballistic missiles also slammed into other cities. Victims reported across the country right there. And remember why I told you that Donald Trump picked 50 days versus 2 weeks? Because back on July 3rd, Putin told Donald Trump in the phone call, it was reported then, that it would take him about 60 days to have a successful summer offensive against Ukraine. So if you go to July 3rd and then you add the dates of Donald Trump saying 50 days, he's giving Putin actually 61 days from July 3rd. He's actually giving Putin everything he wants. And when Donald Trump says, I'll consider imposing secondary, Trump calls it tariffs, he meant sanctions. I'll consider imposing secondary sanctions on Russia. Well, you already withdrew the sanctions on the Russian banks who are now doing business across the world, and Russia's economy was suffering and you bailed them out. So your secondary sanctions will do what? You just lifted the sanctions against the banks. Now, we're seeing how the rest of the world's responding. Prime Minister Mark Carney in Canada posting the following: spoke with President von der Leyen, the president of the European Union Commission, this morning to discuss the new European Union-Canada strategic partnership of the future and next steps to deepen cooperation on industrial policy, critical raw minerals, digital trade, and clean technologies. In the face of a shifting global landscape, Canada and the EU will become even stronger and more competitive through an even closer relationship. And then Prime Minister Carney spoke with the president of Mexico, the very popular President Claudia Sheinbaum there. Today, Prime Minister Carney spoke with the president of Mexico, Claudia Sheinbaum. They discussed strengthening the Canadian and Mexican economies and enhancing their global competitiveness. Details of their discussions. Do you see that there's a shifting of the world order right now? As Donald Trump fires 1,300 workers at the State Department, some critical diplomats getting fired, as America withdraws USAID, as Donald Trump withdraws the United States from NATO, weakens us in the G7. Do you see that there's other alliances that are forming? You've got the Commonwealth basically forming its own kind of reforming its own very strong alliances. So you have like Australia, you've got the UK, you've got Canada. They're joining with the European Union, and America's finding itself isolated there. Then you've got the BRICS nations like Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, China and Russia making inroads, significant ones, into Africa, into South America, Central America. We saw Mexico meeting with Russia and China on the sidelines of the recent BRICS conference in Rio de Janeiro. We saw Xi Jinping of China hosting South America, Central America, and Caribbean nations in Beijing recently. All of that's happening, and our corporate news isn't reporting about it here on the MeidasTouch network. But there is a massive global restructuring with the United States being weaker than ever. As I mentioned at the outset of this video, a majority of Americans now describe Trump as very weak. According to this YouGov poll, Trump's disapproval is negative 17% approval rating, and he's underwater on issues. When it comes to crime, Trump's negative 5%, immigration negative 9%, deportation negative 11%, economy negative 14%, Doge negative 18%, corruption negative 18%, Medicare and Medicaid negative 26%, tariffs negative 26%, healthcare costs negative 29%, inflation negative 32%. And we saw inflation rise last month. We just got that data earlier today. Tariffs are starting to raise prices. U.S. inflation rose 0.3% in June. The annual rate climbed to 2.7%. That's up from 2.3% in April and 2.4% in May. Food, energy, and rent all playing a big role in the increase in June. Core inflation, which excludes food and energy, rose 2.9% year over year in June. And you take a look where these price hikes are coming from. Durable goods, linens, oranges, olives, cookware, audio equipment, major appliances, coffee, sports equipment, and toys. What do you recognize with all of those categories? Part of Donald Trump's trade war against the world. Look, Donald Trump recently said he was imposing a 17% penalty or tariff on Mexico's tomatoes, Mexican tomatoes. What do you think that's going to do to the price of tomatoes? Donald Trump's saying that these massive 50% tariffs against Brazil. What do you think that's going to do to the cost of coffee and orange juice and all these other goods that we get from Brazil? I mean, what do you think is going to happen with that, right? Also, the 30-year Treasury yield rose above 5% yesterday. Again, not a good sign. Again, showing the instability of the markets, the dollar becoming less and less the world reserve currency. Let's show you what was going down on Fox. Fox tried to celebrate the inflation report as though it was a good thing, but the only prices that are going down, airfare, hotel, and motel prices. These are recession indicators, folks. Here, play this clip.
Tariff inflation, okay? So bear with me. Yes, some items are affected by tariffs and the prices have gone up, okay? Household furnishing being one, computers being another. But Sean, here's what fell in this report, and no one's reporting this, okay? Used cars down, new cars down, airline fares down. They all fell, their prices. Eggs down, okay? Snacks down.
Gas.
Hotel and motel prices down. Milk down.
Energy.
Butter down. Cereals down. I mean, come on. There's no tariff
Energy
inflation
down,
here. I'm
energy
sorry.
down. That hits. All right, so let me ask you about this.
Energy was up a little in this report.
Also on Fox, as you have the Trump Gestapo supporting the disappearing of human beings, throwing human beings in concentration camps like Alligator Alcatraz. Fox is basically saying, and you'll see their hosts say this here, that they said, if you can call them Nazis, they say we should really, like take the word Nazis and call ourselves that. Like that could be our own N-word, they say. How disgusting is this? Listen to what they were saying on Fox. This is vile trash right here, and it's used to justify also their racism. Here, play this clip.
This is why the criticism doesn't matter to us when you call us Nazis, Nazi this, Nazi that. I'm beginning to think they don't like us. You know what? I've said this before. We need to learn from the blacks. The way they were able to remove the power from the N-word by using it. So from now on, it's what up, my Nazi? Hey, what up, my Nazi? Oh my God. Hey, what's hanging, my Nazi?
Nazi, please.
Thank God you did a hard eye there.
Let's also not forget that yesterday when Donald Trump was traveling back and forth from Pennsylvania, he said that that when it comes to the Epstein case, he goes, it's boring stuff. Epstein was never a big factor in terms of life. And he goes, it's all fake news. Here's what he said yesterday. Here, play this clip.
I know you've urged people to move on, but I'm curious, why do you think your supporters in particular have been so interested in the Epstein story?
I don't understand
about how it's been handled.
I don't understand it. Why they would be so interested. He's dead for a long time. He was never a big factor in terms of life. I don't understand what the interest or what the fascination is. I really don't. And the credible information's been given. Don't forget, we went through years of the Mueller witch hunt and all of the different things, the Steele dossier, which was all fake. All that information was fake. But I don't understand why the Jeffrey Epstein case would be of interest to anybody. It's pretty boring stuff. It's sordid, but it's boring. And I don't understand why it keeps going. I think really only pretty bad people, including fake news, want to keep something like that going. But credible information, let them give it. Anything that's credible, I would say, let them have it.
Here's where Donald Trump claimed that his uncle was an MIT professor who taught Ted Kaczynski, the Unabomber, and Ted Kaczynski never went to MIT. Here, play this clip.
I have to brag just for a second, because when I first heard about AI, it's not my thing. Although my uncle was at MIT, one of the great professors, 51 years, whatever, he was the longest serving professor in the history of MIT, 3 degrees in nuclear, chemical, and math. That's a smart man. Kaczynski was one of his students. Do you know who Kaczynski was? There's very little difference between a madman and a genius. But Kaczynski, I said, what kind of a student was he, Uncle John, Dr. John Trump? He said, what kind of a student? And he said, seriously good. He said he'd go around correcting everybody, but it didn't work out too well for him.
Now, one of the things that's going on as well in Texas, have you been following this? In addition to the disastrous flash floods that have taken the lives of so many people, young girls at Camp Mystic, the just complete negligence, and I think malice, frankly, by the federal government and state and local governments there, in my view, is entirely unforgivable. But Texas is calling a special session, not to address floods or emergency warnings. No, they want to gerrymander Texas to get rid of the 5 Democratic seats right there. Now, Democrats who are in the state house, they don't want to show up. And if they don't show up, there won't be a quorum for the special session to take place. So now you have Attorney General Ken Paxton, who's running for Senate and whose wife filed for divorce last week, threatens to arrest Democratic representatives in Texas if they fail to show up for Abbott's special session to gerrymander districts before the midterms. And he said that he will send federal authorities to hunt you down. You're going to send federal authorities to hunt you, to assist in hunting lawmakers down. Yeah, go back to what Greg Gutfeld said. They're describing who they are. Finally, Justin Wolfers, economist at the University of Michigan, makes things pretty clear here. Trump claims to have a tariff deal with Britain, but it still hasn't been finalized. We haven't seen the deal. He announced a deal with Vietnam weeks ago, but Vietnam is yet to acknowledge it, and no one has seen the text. Then earlier yesterday, he claims he has a deal with Indonesia, but no one has seen the details. Donald Trump quite literally lies about everything. Trade deals are not tweets or social media posts. They're comprehensive documents, usually hundreds of pages in length and sometimes thousands of pages in length. We haven't seen any of them. Also, the president doesn't get to unilaterally do that. I know the United States has become a dictatorship, an authoritarian regime, but Congress is the one actually responsible for tariffs. Under the MAGA Republicans, though, they've ceded their authority, and America is ruled by a deteriorating, decaying, cognitively addled, lunatic, malignant, narcissistic dictator. That's what it is in the United States. Hit subscribe. Let's get to 6 million subscribers.
Can't get enough Meidas? Check out the Meidas Plus Substack for ad-free articles, reports, podcasts, daily recaps from Ron Filipkowski, and more. Sign up for free now at MeidasPlus.com.